Welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio.
Welcome back, or I should say welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, the new and improved, coming to you in the whole new digital media method mode. I don't know what I'm talking about. All I can say is we got video now. We are now on video with the Rockstar Principles Podcast. We are recording at Nick's house. It is Sunday, January the 3rd? Third? Yeah. Go back to school tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So this was our little, let's start the year off with a new way. Yeah. Like an addition, trying to turn it up a notch. Or as my kids say, turn it up a nacho. And trying to, bring it to you in a different way for folks that maybe would like to see a video portion. Who would? Who wants to see us in video form?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
But, now they can also access our podcast on their drives or on their headphones while they're working out. But if they want to watch us on YouTube,
that's a whole nother way.
Yeah.
Why not? It's free. It's easy.
All we ask is you to hit subscribe.
Yeah, if you hit subscribe down at the bottom, I think it's under the Nick's side. I think it's over on that side, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. On the YouTube, what the kids call the YouTube, then you'll get notification anytime we put a new video up. So,
yeah.
And those of you who are just listening and not watching, you can just ignore the last 3 minutes. All right. So we're going to be coming at you with a couple of different segments today, as we usually do. For those of you that are just watching or listening for the first time, we usually like to talk about a couple of different educational articles, educational topics, and then kind of work in our own personal and professional philosophy on things. So we definitely come across, we'll talk facts, but we also put our own input, our own feeling, our own spin. Yeah, thank you, O'Reilly. Our own spin for what we're talking about, and let you know how we feel. We welcome, as always, your feedback on how you feel about things. And then we'll throw a pop culture segment at the end. We've got a really good one, so make sure you stick around for the pop culture segment because it is hot. The pop culture segment right now. Something that everybody is talking about on social media, and something that if you haven't checked out already, we would highly recommend you check out. But that's to come later. First, we're going to start with a couple of topics that have to do with what's coming up in 2016. We're looking forward to the new year. We've got the new year upon us, and a couple of things that may be new trends, stories, things that are going to be happening in 2016. I found an article on NPR, of all places. I believe this is two for John. 2 editions in a row, 2 Rockstar Principle podcasts in a row, in which I'm referencing NPR, which for me, I'm surprised the phone's not burning in my hand. But anyway, the article is the 6 education stories to watch in 2016 by Claudio Sanchez. So there's 6 different topics here that Claudio Sanchez brings up as things to watch for in 2016. So I'll go through and I'll just read the 6 topics, and then we can kind of talk about each one. One of them, a couple of them have to do with college and higher ed, so we may not go into those as much. But the first one is the new federal education law.
Yep.
Obviously, with the overhaul of No Child Left Behind and the new Every Student Succeeds Act, that's what it's called now instead of No Child Left Behind, Every Student Succeeds. That's going to lead to some changes, so we'll talk about that for sure. The second topic, moving on from Common Core. So that should be interesting. I'm sure Nick has some thoughts on that.
Just got here.
And number 3, charter schools under a microscope. Some things that are going to be happening with charter schools. Number 4, dreamers' dreams deferred. And that has to do with higher ed and the ability for college access for undocumented students.
Skip
over that one.
From our Uncle Buck segment. What was it? Dreamers and...
Silly Hearts.
Silly Hearts. Dreamers and Silly Hearts, everyone.
Number 5, goodbye race-conscious admissions. Again, talking about higher ed and how the author here, Claudio, thinks that the Supreme Court is going to be, the Supreme Court will be banning race on college admissions. Again, that doesn't necessarily apply to us.
But it kind of does.
But we can touch on it, yeah. And then number 6, student debt takes center stage, talking about how much college is costing, higher ed is costing students, and the effect that it's going to have on our country. So we'll definitely touch on that. We've touched on that before. But let's start by talking about the new Every Student Succeeds Act, which the Obama administration pushed through, the overhaul of No Child Left Behind. Essentially, it's returning a lot of the government oversight back to the states rather than it being overseen by the feds so much. And supposedly is going to lead to a lot less testing. We've heard some things about the amount of testing that takes place in schools. There's going to be some relief for that. And let's see, closing the achievement gap and raising the performance of the worst schools is the two major components to Every Student Succeeds. So,
which I think most people would agree have been the major flaws as we headed into the 4th year of not having No Child Left Behind's ESEA reauthorized. So,
right.
I mean, I think these are the big issues that had to be confronted. But the bigger question is the federal law kind of will guide this. However, it's going to be up to states' interpretation now. And depending on what state you live in, function in, what your Department of Ed looks like, what your local up to your state level government looks like, that could determine a lot of how this will play out in terms of, okay, what is this testing going to look like? Are we going to be more value added focused? Are we going to still focus more on the achievement year to year? Where do we pull back, I guess, is the question, and how do we use the data will have to be effective data, to be good data? So I think it poses great questions.
Right.
But once again, I don't know. The federal portion of No Child Left Behind that I liked is they tried to close the gap to some degree between...
Right. Focus on the subgroups.
Yeah, so we did that. And then the states had to be a little bit more in tune with each other and maybe more of a focus on like what's important in terms of, and I know this is a terrible word, a national curriculum almost. There's a little more focus. Does Arkansas meet the same standards as Georgia, meet the same standards as Maryland, as Connecticut, as Pennsylvania, as California, as Texas?
Are you going to name them all? You're going to rattle off all 50 states? You showing off? How many states
Alabama.
I think our
Alaska,
viewers
Arizona,
might be wondering exactly where this table ends and where Nick begins. I'm sitting looking at it.
I'm like Jabba the Hutt.
It's just one big red
ocean. The holiday ocean of red, my friends.
I'm sorry. I distracted us there for a minute. In layman's terms with all this, I think, is the pendulum is now coming back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody who's been in education knows that, everything old is new again. The pendulum's swinging from one end to the other, however you want to phrase it. But it seems as though cooler heads are prevailing when it comes to testing and oversight and micromanaging of schools. The downside of No Child Left Behind. You talked about the positives of No Child Left Behind. The downside is this culture that's been created of over-testing students. Notice I didn't say teaching to the test because that's one of those phrases that annoys the heck out of me.
Because why wouldn't you teach to the test?
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, if the test is measuring what you want the kids to know, even before standardized testing, teachers were teaching to the test. They had their unit test in mind of what they wanted the kids to learn by the end of the unit. They were teaching to that test.
Absolutely.
So this, whole idea of teaching to the test just really annoys me. So don't use it. Don't say it. Okay? Because I'm coming for you if you do.
It's going to come through the TV screen.
Right through. We're going to reach. That's our next step. We're going to be 3D.
7
reach
days.
Right through. What's 7 days? What is that?
The Ring?
Oh, yeah, I never saw that.
I feel like the little girl is going to climb out.
Yeah, I don't like that stuff.
What if we were 3D?
Yeah, that's what I just said. You don't listen.
Oh, you said come out. You didn't say 3D though, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
you were too busy doing your Ring impersonation. So the second one, moving on from the Common Core, I thought was an interesting headline for that section. The controversy, or as the English say, controversy, over the much maligned Common Core state standards will diminish. States will continue their efforts to rebrand or rename the standards while for the most part following them. So, yeah, I mean, it's the standards are what they are. Common Core, again, is a is a political third rail, something that a lot of people get really worked up about talking
and they don't
about
understand.
Common Core, and they really don't. They really don't. I laugh. Ha! I mock. No, mock's a strong word. But I laugh when when you go on things like social media and you see what a lot of our friends who are not in education
think
when they see Common Core, what they think Common Core is and what it's not. And actually what scares me is when I see some of our friends who are in education and what they think Common Core is and what it is not. But again, according to the author here, the states are going to be still focusing on standards, but trying to go away from, I guess, using the term Common Core.
Yeah, because to me, and I don't want to comment much on this, but the standards are fine. Nothing wrong with the standards.
Right.
So I think people also are, because they're so closely connected, the whole push on everyday math, Singapore math, this new math, it's called just new math.
Yeah.
People tie that so directly to the Common Core as though they're the same thing.
Right.
And they're not. They're not even close to that. If you look at the math standards, they're not much different than they've been in the past. It's what NCTM recommends. It's what the states have pretty much always followed.
Yeah.
But just like I'm sure we would get confused, living in a different world of...
Yeah. And the thing that cracks me up about Common Core is that, and I guess it should be a good thing, but is that it seems as though those on the right and on the left both hate it equally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the right sees it as this, push for things that aren't important and moving things into education that kids really shouldn't be learning or shouldn't be focusing on. The left sees it as micromanaging and overmanaging what's happening in our schools. So I guess that's the funny part about it, is that there really isn't a, most of the time when things come to the feds being involved, there's either a right take on it or a left take on it, and they're usually at odds over that. But the funny thing about Common Core is that it seems to be uniting. That's the positive thing.
That's right, yeah.
And it's in their hatred of Common Core,
Core.
but the left and the right. And notice I'm doing it for you on camera. I know this is my right hand, but I said the left because it's your left.
Yeah.
But the left and the right are coming together and saying,
wow,
you don't like this. Yeah, don't keep doing that.
Domo
That's distracting.
arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Domo. Number 3, charter schools under a microscope. Nick, I don't like to pat myself on the back, at least more than once or twice a day. But from the beginning, charter schools, I've said, just the model of charter schools is not going to work. I've never really felt threatened by charter schools.
I agree 100%.
Even when they first came out years and years ago. It's actually around right when I was getting into education, the charter schools first reared their head. And I never really was bothered by them because I always felt as though we had a head start on them in the public sector. And that as long as it's good to have, I always felt like it's good to have competition. I never really... I like having parochial schools in my community. I feel like that's a competition for us, and it keeps you on your toes. So anyway, according to the author again here, with charter schools, the federal government has put a lot of money into them, and that there's you can expect these publicly funded private-run schools to face new scrutiny, new criticism. I think we've already seen that. I think we saw a lot of that in 2015. But I think we're going to see more of it this year, especially with the presidential campaigns coming up. That's definitely something that, as opposed to what I was just talking about, the right is very much in support of the idea of charter schools. The left, not so much.
Well, if you take it back to, and this will be my commentary on this topic, because Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to distract our listeners. I was just showing
for the viewers. Yeah, we really are plugging the heck out of Dunkin' Donuts.
We're trying to get a sponsor. Yeah, go ahead.
The veggie flatbread sandwich, 350 calories, super healthy, a lot of protein. Can't go wrong. What did you have, John?
I had a everything bagel with cream cheese.
Oh.
So today's my final day of unhealthy eating before I start the new year. Hopefully able to stick to some kind of diet. So
everything bagel.
Yeah. Yep. With cream cheese. You were going to say about charter schools?
Yeah. Let's go back to the I'd say the early 2000s, maybe around 2004, 2005, when the I don't want to call it a slant. However, to a strong degree, I would say there was, if you were far on the left, your view was that the Bush administration and the conservative push was to use charter schools and vouchers as a way to dismantle public education.
Right.
Like that that would be the argument.
Yep.
Okay. The argument on the conservative, on the Republican side would have been, we want competition. We want almost like a free economy within the education system.
Right.
And like you were saying, schools should be competitive. Regardless of which side of the fence you fell on with that, right? Where we are now in 2015, 2016, in this particular school year, I would think it's fair to say that charter schools haven't hurt public education at all. Now,
I don't think so.
You might be able to find some, very low SES districts, who have been affected, whose finances are so minimal that a charter school could have had an effect.
Right, but I think, and not to interrupt you, but I think in a lot of those cases, you'll find successful charter schools too.
Sure, yeah.
I know of several in Philadelphia, just in our neck of the woods, that are very, very successful charter schools that have done wonders to help the kids in their community and are easily outperforming their public competition.
Right. And now, granted, if you trust the research, it's few and far between. However, this is true completely. So where I would say is, if you look at our situation now in 2016, charter schools have not dismantled public ed.
No.
All right, and that's not because we switched back to a Democratic administration. Nothing changed with the Obama administration in terms of
when it comes to education.
No,
it doesn't.
It was status quo
until the
right.
rehaul of No Child Left Behind.
Right, and again, that's just more a pendulum shift than anything. Yeah. So I would say that the good thing about charter schools, in terms of the scrutiny and coming under the microscope, the only problem I had against charter schools, because I agree completely in the competition standpoint that there should be viable alternatives. There should be competition. It should be, people should have a choice.
Bring it on.
Exactly. However, if you don't judge us based on the same criteria, then it is problematic. And what I think is fair is that the years that have passed by where charter schools were not held to the same testing standards and things that we were, now it's coming out that the large majority of those charter schools, it's our special guest.
Yeah, they can't see through.
Aww. Thor's down here. He's in John's pocket trying to do whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
But so now I think that the microscope is on them in terms of, oh my God, are they as good as the public schools? Are they actually achieving? And I think that's what needed to happen. We just needed a way to actually to chart whether or not they've been successful. And that's not to say we're so much better that we wanted them to fail. I think it's saying, as educators, we want all kids to have an opportunity to learn in an effective system. So,
one of my core beliefs when it comes to all of this, and I've felt this way since I was a teacher, and I know it's not necessarily the way a vast majority of folks in our profession feel, but I've said this openly, is that we need to stop acting as though we have a captive audience. We need to stop pretending as though we are the only game in town, because we're not. And like I said, I think the whole idea of charter schools, and when you couple that with homeschooling and parochial schools, which parochial schools have been around for ages, but when you add charter schools and now homeschooling to that as competition for public schools, again, I think it raises the level of competition. It raises the level of engagement. It puts public schools. Look at what public schools do now. Look at the things that happen in public schools as far as just trying to appeal to communities. I can remember when I was in Upper Darby, we used to do monthly tours of the building, for parents, for prospective parents, for anybody in the community for that matter. Look at the things in terms of just orientation programming that we do for kids that are coming to our schools from 6th grade to 7th grade.
Yeah.
Those things haven't been around. It's no coincidence that those things have caught on and become more invigorating. They become more engaging, is the word I'm looking for. For kids. Then I can remember going to orientation where you just went up, you sat in an auditorium, the principal spoke about the school, you maybe went on a tour, and then you went back to your school. We're doing more things now, as we should, of trying to sell the kids on our program. We're going to our feeder school and actually in engaging the kids in their current school to try to ease that transition. Why? Because number one, we want them to come to our school. But number two, it also helps when they get there for them to be more acclimated and more accustomed to the way things do, and that helps with achievement.
Yeah.
So, schools, it's really forced the hand of schools to stop having a monopoly on communities and just saying to families, well, you've got no other option. You have to come to us.
come here. Yeah.
So we're not going to bother doing anything to try to engage you.
Whole different world.
Yeah. All right, so to wrap it up, just a couple more, 4, 5, and 6. Dreamers' dreams deferred. Students brought to the U.S. illegally will face greater opposition because of immigration reform. Again, you talk about the presidential election year.
Big topic.
And, how this is definitely, the right feels significantly different than the left does on that whole idea.
And then there's Donald Trump.
Who's like even further out in the one end.
Can you imagine if he became president? What the education system would turn into?
Yeah, I'm just going to move on.
Wow.
Race-conscious admissions, goodbye to that. Again, according to the author here, he feels the Supreme Court's going to ban race on college admissions, forcing institutions to abandon affirmative action policies, which, if that does happen, would be interesting to see the ripple effects of that. And then student debt. That's the one I wanted to talk about.
That one is a...
Higher education leaders are going to have to create a more transparent, consumer-friendly way for students and parents to rate colleges because there's going to be more call for relief to student debt, which, it's only, we've talked before on the podcast about the saturation of college students and how there are way too many kids in college now compared to what the job market dictates and compared to what's needed by the job market.
Absolutely.
Well, if you take away any form of student debt or if you relieve even student debt, it's going to be just totally saturated. And again, only further cements my belief that we need to be getting more and more kids into 2-year colleges, associate degrees,
trade
programs and technical schools. That those are the jobs. Those I just see it. I've been saying this for like the last 5 or 6 years, and I just see it coming down the turnpike that there's going to be so many kids that have these degrees from. Well, we see it now. We see it already. I'm not any kind of Nostradamus saying that. I mean, we're already seeing kids come out of school. We see kids coming out with teaching degrees that don't even sub. Have we talked about this? Have you and I talked about this?
Not really.
I know we haven't on the podcast, but they don't sub. This is why
jobs.
we have such a sub shortage.
Yeah, they can't afford to live that way.
It's because it's a combination of the sub companies don't pay that well. Relatively, and just the lack of patience on the part of students coming out of school. They want to fall right into a job, and if there's a job not there,
that's a different.
They're going in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to pay your dues. Live with your folks for a little while. Do a subbing job where you're earning $100 a day to do or whatever. I know it's chump change compared to what you could be earning somewhere else, but that's how you get your foot in the door. Like, why did you just spend... I'm just thinking as a parent. I'm just talking as a parent now, right? Not even as a principal.
Right.
If I paid for my kid to go to college for 4 years or however many years, and they came out with a degree in teaching and they spent one summer trying to find a teaching job and didn't get a teaching job and said, oh, well, I'm going to go into whatever, I'd be furious. I'd be like, well, what were the last 4 years for?
Now, I agree with what you're saying, but I think what the argument on the other side of that is that they're taking that the subbing and that paying your dues actually costs so much now that you can't start making up the difference from what you spent to go to college and the loans you took on and everything else in the first place.
Right.
So
that's what we all did.
No, I get it.
We all face that coming out of school in debt. But you live with your parents. You live rent free. You know what I mean. You stay somewhere where you don't have to pay rent. You don't immediately get a place of your own. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's a perfect situation. I'm just saying.
No. But if
to only give it one summer and then throw your hands up and say, oh well, I'm going to go. It's just it's crazy to me.
But would you have been tempted after that one summer if you saw a job at Wegmans where you'd make more money and have benefits? Would that tempt you?
As a 21, 22-year-old kid, yes. But that's why there has to be an adult.
Yeah, well,
a person, an older person, as some sort of influence in this person's life.
A Yoda?
Who says, or the parent who paid the bills for the college, who says, hey, hold on. I understand you want to get a job. I understand you want to earn more money so you and your friends can go out and have fun and do things. but getting a job in a supermarket, while it might pay better than a subbing job, or even in other things. We have kids who are going into Vanguard investment companies or going to work for banks or whatever. Yeah, it's going to pay astronomically better than a sub job, but it's not going to help you get a teaching job.
If that's what you really want. Yeah.
Well, I hope that's what you want. It's what you just went to school for.
Well, we've had the discussion before that seems like an okay thing to go into. These kids who go to college with no real purpose. I'm telling you, it's scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. The competition for teaching jobs at its peak, in the last 3 or 4 years maybe, is going to you're going to begin to have a harder and harder time. I mean, as it is right now, it's difficult enough to find people for like a French opening or a high school physics position.
Yeah.
Or, it's tough enough to find people for that. But I think eventually it's going to be difficult to find people for anything because they're just not waiting around. If they don't get a job, they're just jumping right into some other career.
Nope. And sadly, as this pool diminishes, I think, and this is a criticism of our colleges and universities, they are going to even further lower the bar on what they let get through these programs.
Right.
And we, at some point, we got to talk more about that too. Yeah. In fact, I would love to get some higher up members of even like a Westchester.
Yeah.
Like someone who actually is in charge of.
I know some folks over there
setting the criteria in the bar because. Yeah. It is scary to see some of the student teachers that make it to that level, and you look at them and you say, how did they get through the coursework, and how do they get through the pre-field experiences to reach this point?
As I'm listening to you talk about it, and I'm not really listening to you, I'm thinking in my own mind about what I want to say next.
We've established that pretty well in this sequence. What was I doing earlier?
This might not be a bad thing, in that you're going to find that the people that you interview are the ones that really want to be teachers rather than the people that think, I'm going to go to school to be a teacher because it'll be nice to have my summers off. And, anybody can get a teaching degree, which in a sense is true.
I hope you're
right. It might actually weed out some of the undesirables who really don't have the fire in their belly and the passion for teaching. It might push some of them out. Hey, Thor, you're on TV.
Thor's in the shot now. He made it.
There he is. See, there really was a dog that was kind of roaming around back here earlier.
For those of you familiar with our other TV endeavor, the famous No School Medley, then you've
That's
met
right.
Thor.
That's right. Yeah. That's probably on our YouTube channel, right?
It is.
Which people can, if you haven't clicked on that, 70,000 plus other people have. So, even though it was 2 years ago, it's not too late.
Just to see Thor.
Just to check it out. Yeah. All right, we've beaten that one to death, haven't we?
Yeah, we sure have. I think let's wrap up this segment, and we'll do a separate segment with the teacher advice.
Okay.
We'll take a break.
We'll be right back with more of the Rockstar Principles podcast.
We wish you. Look at Thor like now he's in fear. Aw,
come on, Thor. Doesn't like him. Okay.
He's licking himself.
We'll be right back with more of the Rockstar Principles podcast.
Thanks for helping RSP top the charts in the Edu podcast world. Keep it real with Twisted Steel and School Appeal.